Hello and welcome to a new show that I'm doing on my channel. This is the Liberated Borg show. So today we're going to be doing a rebuttal of the annual meeting of Jehovah's Witnesses, which was held in the JW Broadcasting on their website. And with me today we have a panel of lovely ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who are going to help discuss the topic at hand. So first of all, we've got Jared, who we all know, almost atheist. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you very much.
We've got Susan Brewer, who was on a few weeks ago on the first stream that I did. Thank you for coming, Susan. And today, for the first time on my channel, we have Scott Williamson. Thank you for coming.
Nice to be here.
So how is everyone today?
Doing well.
Great, man.
Good. Yeah, so we has anyone got any initial thoughts on what we watched there then on the annual meeting?
Well, it's all about indoctrination, isn't it?
As always.
It's, building a thought fortress, building walls around the mind so that you can't break out and think outside of it. I have so much to say. I'm going to hush right now and let the other guys talk.
Yeah, I see it as they seem to be starting the new year clamping down on this. They spent all of last year with this, listen and obey crap that they were going on about over and over again, and this year they seem to be clamping down on that and trying to get back out into the ministry and ramp up their efforts. That's what I saw.
Yeah. It's kind of more of the same, It's just, I think it's kind of an opportunity with the world events going on where they feel they can get a foothold in their message, in spreading the message, which I've seen since I was a witness. They used to really do that, take advantage of world events that would happen at the time and just double down.
Mm-hmm. One thing that occurred to me was that, at least from my perspective, the overall tone of the video seemed to be sort of in denial of the fact that, as we know, they lost 0.6% of their followers. I didn't see anything that suggested there was going to be an admission of that coming. In fact, I won't say too much because I'm sure we'll get into all of it, but it's just seemed to me like they were patting themselves on the back, like they'd had such a great year and that everything is just ramping up and the chariot's just moving ahead. And I don't think that's the case at all. So it'll be interesting to view some of these things again and discuss them.
Yeah, well, we can have a little chat about that. I mean, if you want to, Jared, because I haven't actually, I didn't have enough time to actually take all, take all the clips. So I've got just some of the videos that they were showing. But on that point, there was one line which I did hear where Tony Morris said the theocratic organisation is growing. I think he said it's growing exponentially or something.
Something of that nature, yeah. I think it's funny that they still keep up that sort of rhetoric, given it's simply not true. But they made this one claim. I don't remember that line specifically that you referenced. So like as when it was, but I know they were almost alluding to the idea that the preaching work was continuing in countries where there was no legal entity. So in other words, likely where it was banned. That was how I took it.
Yeah, me too.
So in other words, they're creating growth. They can't say for sure, as an example, if it was Russia, they can't say, oh, the preaching work is really going on in Russia and it's going well. So they're giving this illusion of growth without being able to actually say what the numbers are.
Yeah. And Obviously with the indoctrination and everything that they've been doing, like last year and everything, the Jehovah's Witnesses will just be, all the witnesses will just be lapping that up and just going, oh yes, that makes sense. That's, even though, was it last month in the broadcasting, they obviously mentioned this 0.6% decline.
Yeah, I saw something last year. I think it was around April. There was a New York Times story that was talking about our witnesses on the decline or something like that. But I think they interviewed a few witnesses or one Jehovah's Witness who was saying that because of the pandemic, they can't go door to door like they want to, and it would be really a great time for them to, get people based on the pandemic that's going on and give hope to people and stuff like that. But I think the article mentioned something like overall in 2019 they grew like at least 1%, like 1.1%. But I don't know what the figures are looking at this last year. I don't know what they said last year. But it seems like, most people are ticking the box for nuns. So that's got to affect everybody across the board, all kinds of religions. People are just leaving religions, in droves, at least in America, I think is the case.
Yeah, there's a world shift going on at the moment, isn't there? And as you say, there's a lot of people now, taking no religion whatsoever. So, it's obviously going to be hard on religions going forth from this point, especially religions that have only like 8 million members.
Well, I think in the video that they have in this annual report regarding this new study book, in my opinion, they did a really fine job of giving us a really good timeline of the dumb down. I know that I know they would have begun before 1946, and I don't think, Katie, you're going to play that video based on what we've discussed. But in that video,
I think I've got it. If you want me to play it.
In that timeline, they're going to start out in 1946 with the first Bible study book, Let God Be True, and at timestamp 2246 in the video on jw.org, they were directed to write this book in simple everyday language, because before 1946 people were having a hard time understanding what they were trying to teach. And they go through the timeline of each Bible study book that they have written and produced and published. And each one of them, they give us fine quotes and examples of how every time they dumb it down even further.
Yeah. Well, I'll play that video now for the viewers so they can, because I think I've got that one. It was the one about the publications, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, about the new Bible study guide and how they're going to do all that business.
Yeah, well, I'll play that now for.
Everyone who claims to be a Christian and has dedicated himself to Jehovah God must not only preach, but he must be able to teach. We must go into the homes of the people and teach them what the Bible says.
We needed a book that could be used effectively in conducting Bible studies. One that would cover the basic doctrines and truths.
Many years ago, in the Bethel dining room, after the noon meal, Brother Noah read off a list of 15 to 20 brothers' names who were to report at his office immediately. And they were told to write a new study book using simple, everyday language, just as they would present basic Bible truths to someone at the door. Well, within months, that book was written, printed, and released as Let God Be True.
That book made even a new publisher feel confident. It was like having a bombshell in our hands, capable of blowing to bits all of the false doctrines.
At one house, I conducted studies in that book for 15 years with different people. First, a woman. Next, a family. Then some young people. Finally, another woman. 6 people in all got baptized using that book.
Still, some struggled to finish this and the even more detailed Impossible to Lie book and to make progress. By the late 1960s, a book was needed that got right to the point.
They called it the Blue Bomb, and it was a game changer. A game changer. It was written in a simple, clear, and a pointed way so that any sincere reader could understand it.
I used to deal drugs. I wanted to change, but I didn't know how. Then, my manager gave me the truth book. I was immediately convinced I'd found the truth and the real meaning of life. From then on, everyone who came looking for drugs got a truth book instead.
By the early 1980s, the field needed something new.
Could a book be produced at the same level as the Bible Stories book, but with the information presented in the truth book?
I had no Bible studies at all. Now I have 3 and a 4th one ready to start. Thank you.
I was studying with a man who had been smoking for 17 years. Then he started to read the Live Forever book. That did it. Any book that powerful shouldn't go to waste sitting on the shelf.
Only a decade later, the world had changed. In some lands, so many wanted to study that they were put on a waiting list. Other lands faced a different problem.
Somehow we dilly and dally with some of our students. Takes us years to bring some into the truth, and we wonder why. Maybe this book, with its pointed truths, will open their minds and their hearts to see.
The Live Forever book helped me to love Jehovah, but the Knowledge book helped me to make the decision to serve him.
My husband studied the Knowledge book while he was working in Poland. He loved it so much that he translated it into Mongolian and sent it to us. Soon, we were all baptized. My husband then joined the real Mongolian translation team.
Still, we needed a book that not only sped up disciple making, but also touched the heart.
This book has an instant appeal that quickly draws householders into a conversation. Some are calling it the gold nugget.
I was searching for something to fill the emptiness that we both felt in our lives. I was being trained by one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and she said, feel free to read whatever I have in my toolbox. I opened it, and immediately, little yellow book, What Does the Bible Really Teach, caught my eye. The scriptures in the beginning of the book, they touched my heart immediately, and I felt like these answer all the questions I've been searching for my entire life.
Publication entitled, What Can the Bible Teach Us?
It was like having a bombshell in our hands.
It really touched the heart, and it helped bring many into the truth.
I found answers to all my questions in just one book. This book was sent from God.
The best teaching tool I have ever been privileged to use.
We thought this was the book and the only book, and that there never could be another.
Well, I can try and say that I hope you enjoyed that, viewers, but I can understand it's not the nicest thing to be watching, all the propaganda. But that's a basic outline of all the publications that they've produced over the past, what is it, 50, 60 years in that one? You mentioned
Yeah,
1947.
1946, yeah. As I mentioned to you guys while we were backstage while that was playing, to me, what they have done here is given us just this perfect dumb down. Well, no, actually, I said that before you played the video. I apologize. Okay. But after that video, when Splain comes on to explain why they're coming out with the new book, I'm sorry, I will try so hard not to be nasty and sarcastic. I really will. But Splain drives me up the wall. Do the math. I literally got, let's see, 1 minute and 45 seconds into his remarks. And as I was taking notes in capital block letters, I wrote the word yikes with exclamation points across my notepad and had to turn the video off. It was just excruciating. Because basically, here's what Splain splains. How do I indoctrinate someone into a destructive cult? That's what this book, of course, every book they've ever produced, but that's what this new book, this new study guide for Bible studies is about. And within 4 minutes, he says, how soon do I direct them to the organization? Then, within the next minute, he says, how do I share what I just learned with a friend? In other words, how do I take what you just taught me and go indoctrinate another new member into your destructive cult? Okay, this is right off the bat. Okay, and they've designed the book to take the pressure off. The pressure off of what? From whom? Who's the pressure coming from? The governing body. That's who it's coming from. They've taken, and I talked with Katie before we came on air. All right, this is the book I studied. This is the book I studied from. It's 223 pages long. This is the second book. Okay, this is the second book. I had to study this book before I could be baptized as well. It also is 223 pages long. This is the Organized to Do Jehovah's Will book, which you study in order to get baptized, so you're prepared to answer all of the questions in order to be baptized. It's 213 pages long. I studied for 3.5 years out of these books before I allowed my smart to become stupid. And what they've done with the new book, and they said they did it, let me see, later on, Jeffrey Jackson is going to say that one reason, people might say the new book is 256 pages long. Oh my goodness, it might be too long. People aren't going to study. This is almost 800 combined pages that I studied for 3.5 years. But
a lot of studying,
so
isn't it?
my point is the journey to the fucking dumb down.
And
256 pages might be too long for you to get inducted. So you don't give them the new right up front. If you have one interested in your Bible study, they've got a brochure that looks like a watchtower, and it's formatted very much like a watchtower, has the first 3 studies in it, right? And so if the person does those 3 studies and wants to continue, then they get the real book. Then they watch the videos and all that. And the reason for that is you don't want to waste that material on somebody that's not going to be serious about a study. Yeah. And they cite in the beginning of their video that a study had been done. I'm trying to find in my notes. A study had been done showing another reason they had done this is that people don't read anymore. Now, yes, I agree. I have noticed that people read less. But on our Discord channel, we just have a new requested room called the Book Club. There are lots of people who actually do read. And I would like to see Who did that study? Who did the research? And I want to see the peer reviews. I want to see all of I want to see this study that shows that we're doing this because people are too fucking stupid to read. All right, I'm going to shut up and let one of you guys talk now.
Yeah, this is amazing. You know, when you look back, like I know when I was a witness, it was a long time ago, way back, way back. And yeah, it was like a lot of reading to do. And a lot of Christians would say, well, why is so much of this reading necessary? You know, all you need is the Bible. You know, that rings of a cult. You know, you're reading material that are man-made material, you know, and not putting that same emphasis on the Bible. And it's kind of true in a sense that, you know, they really want to help you interpret the Bible a certain way. And they like to tell you that the Bible interprets itself. But that's just not true, because Bibles don't interpret anything. Books don't read themselves. People read books, and people interpret books. And if you can't read, you can't interpret anything that you read. So it's just a big phony sales pitch. And I guess what the whole point, it even used to cross my mind, like maybe the whole point is from the very beginning, the more they get you to, you know, read, and, you know, the more skin that's in the game, so to speak, then the more inculcated you become into the cult. You know, the more you get invested. You know, when you invest yourself in it, then there's an emotional anchor into it. And then you've got family, and they want to bring families in, and, you know, and it just becomes a real emotional anchor, you know, for people. But I was kind of interested, Susan, what drew you into that late into the stage of life to become part of the witnesses? Because I was really young, so I was at that 20-year-old mark where a lot of people go into religion or leave religions. It's like a really weird time of life. What got you into studying to begin with?
Well, without drawing it out too long, because I've told my story before, and Katie might want to put the link up or whatever to that one. But I was working. I was working with a lovely young lady that I became very good friends with, and we were months into the friendship before I found out she was a Jehovah's Witness. Mm. And I was having a little bit of a rocky time in my marriage at the time, which is all now fine. Everything's very good. And I had lost my mother, both of my brothers, my sister to death. And I was actually a practicing Buddhist at the time. And they sold me, well, first of all, they did the prescribed thing because I was interested in the Bible being historically and scientifically correct. So as you know, Scott, you come armed with answers for those questions. You've got your prescribed scriptures and your spiel to deal with people like me who want to know about that. But it was the promise of seeing my loved ones. Mm-hmm. It was the resurrection and seeing.
Uh-oh, your audio fell out. Uh-oh.
Seem to have lost your audio, Susan.
I think she's muted at the moment.
Yeah,
unmute. Muted, Susan.
Uh-oh.
Oh, dear.
Well, Almost Atheist, how did you become a witness?
I had the bad luck of being born into it.
Oh, no.
As fate would have it.
She'll probably call back
in. It's interesting you saying that around 20 is a time when people either leave or join, because that's when I left.
Yeah.
So it's an astute observation. One thing I wanted to point out, since we are lacking Susan at the moment, one thing I wanted to point out about what I believe it was Anthony Morris later said in regard to the new publication. He said, no matter what tool we use, only Jehovah can make it grow.
Mm-hmm.
Referring to growth as in only Jehovah can bring these people into our religion.
Mm-hmm.
What I thought was so interesting about that was, if that's the case, what's the point of any new publications?
Right.
If the publication actually doesn't matter, because they're kind of limping on two opinions, to borrow a phrase.
Mm-hmm.
On the one hand, they're saying that that we need new publications to keep up to date with how people learn. On the other hand, they're saying it doesn't matter what our publications say, Jehovah's going to take care of all of it. So they kind of need to choose a direction on that, because it's contradictory. But I just thought that was interesting, because they'll say those things, and witnesses at large will say, yeah, like you said, Katie, they'll be lapping it up. But in reality, when you look at what they're actually saying, it's contradictory. Miss Susan, I apologize for taking some of your airtime, but welcome back.
No. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know what happened because my mic was not on mute. I think my little Android just is doing its overheat thing. No, Jared, I always enjoy listening to you, and everybody's story is important. I thought for a long time, Scott, that my story wasn't, because I'm only in 8 years. I had this full life beforehand, come back into that life afterwards. And Sherry D'Souza actually told me one time, she said, no, Susan, everybody's story is important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so she offered me a Bible study. She brought along her mom, who is my age. I am a studious person anyway, and so I just I fell into it, and I got permission from Katie before we started to quote Jeff Hawkins, who was on Chris Shelton's Sensibly Speaking podcast just day before yesterday. And it gave me a lot of relief in trying to figure out how the hell I got wrapped up in all of this as an old lady already. And this is a direct quote I wrote down from Jeff. He says this: when you study, now he was talking about Scientology, but we can say when you study with Jehovah's Witnesses, you have to find something that you agree with. And then you have to find another thing that you agree with, and another thing that you agree with. That is hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hypnotic technique which is very well known, interestingly enough, by salesmen.
Mm-hmm.
You get the customer to agree, and once they start nodding that head, then you take them down that road, and that's what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the way. If there is anybody watching this who is studying with or is considering to study with, I would ask them to please consider that quote from Jeff Hawkins.
Awesome.
Perhaps focus more, because the reverse of that, Chris asked Jeff, well, how do you reverse that? And Jeff basically, I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said the exact reverse. You ask that person, is there anything Jehovah's Witnesses teach that you disagree with? Yes, there is. Is there anything else you disagree with? Yes, there is. And so the next thing you know, you can actually get someone to a place that the floodgates will open, the thought fortress will fall, and they will be able to take some definitive steps. That I really do appeal to anyone considering studying. Please don't.
Yeah. Well, one thing that, on self-reflection, looking at myself, I think one flaw I had, personality flaw I had, was I wasn't very argumentative. So I didn't want to disagree with people too much. felt uncomfortable for me to be in that kind of conversation where we're disagreeing and debating about things, especially if I don't know a whole lot about what someone's telling me. So when it came to, religion and some of the things they were bringing up, I really wasn't all that educated about it to begin with. It was kind of all new to me, but there were things I disagreed with or things I questioned at least, but I would maybe question it a little bit. But if they kind of kicked back and they came with their, really good, commonsensical type of arguments or whatever, I didn't really know how to refute it or anything at that point. And so it was just a lot easier for me to just go ahead and say, yeah, that makes sense. And making the fallacy that because it makes sense, it's therefore true, and I fell for it. And when you're a young guy, like around 20 years old, your brain is still kind of developing, or it might just be developed to a point where you may understand a little bit about reasoning and understanding, but you're still not quite experienced enough, and you still haven't built up enough life experiences to learn things like that, little deep life things, making life decisions, and that's why I think that a lot of young people, you'll see them come in, because I noticed that early on, like everybody that becomes witnesses are like my age. Like I hardly ever see older folks come in, but it's usually people that are really young because they're so, they're kind of off balance to begin with, and then they get swept up. And so I was just really curious, but I understand it too. Like if you're a person who, you've been around the block, you're an older person, mature person, this stuff is designed to be powerful. It's powerful stuff. It's giving you hope. It's appealing to your emotions. And, one thing that I say a lot is that all of our beliefs, I don't care if you're a Jehovah's Witness, an atheist, an agnostic, whatever you are, all your beliefs are rooted on feelings, how you feel, and you project your feelings out onto the world. And so what you see is how you interpret. And that's really the driving force behind what motivates people in their beliefs. So me, I try to be as agnostic about as much as I can. I try not to be too confident that I know on the ontological truth about so many things, because it's so easy to be for your own mind to mislead you. And it's so easy for people like Jehovah's Witness organization to come in and just exploit it for you. They'll just come in and they'll find out what, maybe you don't like world events. You're worried about the world. Well, they'll take advantage of that. They'll start jumping in on, this is a good time to start talking about the kingdom, and the hope, and start double down on that. Or maybe you have family problems and you start opening up about your family problems, and then they'll just double down on that. Well, look, you're part of the biggest family in the world. This is a great family. We're a wonderful organization. We're like brothers and sisters, and look at how we interact. Come to the Kingdom Hall, see the love among ourselves, and things like that are going to touch your emotions and just trigger you and tweak you out. And it's so easy. So anybody watching this, be aware of that too, that you don't know everything, and you may not even be aware of what your triggers are. It's all kind of subconscious, and I fell for it,
Yeah, and it's quite interesting what you're mentioning there about the emotions. I was reading a study recently where a group of psychologists and neuroscientists have got together and mapped the areas of the brain which are active within different parts of religious teachings and religious belief and religious actions. And it turns out that obviously the doctrine, when you're reading the doctrine and stuff like that, that's obviously affecting your logical centers of the brain. But the biggest part of religion and the biggest draw, the part of the brain which uses the biggest network when you're thinking of religion, is the emotional centers, is this theory of mind. And that's why they double down on these emotional events, because that is the part that you're going to be using the largest network in your brain to do that, and that's why it's so powerful, because there's very few. The logical centers of the brain are nowhere near as big, so they're not. It's very hard to use logic to get past that emotion.
And I've read that even the logical centers of your brain are dependent on the emotional centers.
Yeah.
They had one example of somebody, they did something to quiet down the part of their brain that dealt with emotions, and they lost all logical reasoning about anything. Like, they couldn't reason about anything. So even your logic is motivated by some feeling, some sort of emotional driver. So we're emotional creatures. I mean, that's who we are. We're a social animal, and that emotional center, I mean, we're talking thousands of years of adaptations to make us who we are, to survive within our tribes, and then within a greater context. And so we need this sort of ability to connect with one another on very deep levels, and that's the main driver in our behaviors. And so, yeah, witnesses, Scientologists, general Christians, Muslims, whoever you are, they're gonna always appeal to your emotion at the end of the day, and they'll try to make it look like it's logical, but even that's an emotional appeal. Some people are really get excited about and feel good about things that sound logical, and they feel good about it. Like, oh, this makes so much sense. It connects the dots, man. I feel really good about that. When the brain can kind of unify like that, that's when people become happier, and joyful. And then they really get involved. And, whenever you get emotional about some activity, that's when you do the best at it. Because I was like one of the most zealous witnesses you would have ever met, I would wake up so happy about the hope. And, I just read the literature. I was trying to be an encouragement to my family, and it was all because I felt strong. But once I started doubting and that emotion went out the window, I started getting confused. Oh man, it was like night and day. It's amazing.
Yeah, and then if you couple that as well with the the points in the life that, say, like a cult like Jehovah's Witnesses and many religions as well will try to get you at, and there's a conversation going on in the chat. Firstly, I'd like to say hello, Kat. Welcome to the stream. Thank you for being here, and M&K as well. Thank you for coming along and sitting in the live chat. But Kat was mentioning there, it looks like that they are trying, when we watched the last video, she said it looks like they're trying to grab people at the weakest point, and that sums up exactly what they're trying to do with this releasing this new publication, which we'll talk about in a bit, and the other publications that they've released. But I think a good talking point to go on from here is what M&K has said, and it just shows the audacity that some witnesses have. She says they target people who have lost someone. My sister-in-law and her husband stalk obituary websites.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the next level. I haven't heard that one.
I actually heard that for the first time on another XJW channel just last week, that they literally will do the obit page. Yeah.
Wow.
Man.
Yeah. And, Scott, you were talking about the emotional thing, the love bombing.
Mm-hmm.
When the first time you go to a meeting, if you're an adult and you've started studying or whatever, the first time you go to, or up until you get baptized, actually, oh boy, everybody's so happy to see you. And so glad you're here, and we love you so much. And then a few years down the road, you witness someone else, in this case, a born-in, son of an elder. Of course, I won't say any names, but son of an elder, son of a regular pioneer, get disfellowshipped because he fell in love with a young lady who was not a Jehovah's Witness.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing led to another in their relationship, and so blah, blah, blah. And when you go from the extreme of being love bombed as a newbie to witnessing the shunning, I mean shunning, of a young man who did nothing more than fall in love. And it was horrifying. I couldn't bring myself to do it.
Yeah,
I just
wanted to
couldn't.
get out. I wanted to get out before someone threw me out, because I don't know if I could have handled being rejected as much as I was in love with everybody and in love with the idea of organization. But when I started doubting, I just wanted to just get it over with, like just fire myself, just get out while I can, while I have the strength to do it.
That's what I did. I disassociated. Once I was awake and the elders started breathing down my neck as I was trying to fade, I was like, no, you can't fire me. I quit.
Yep.
It's interesting that you mentioned the shunning aspect and the emotional, and we couple that with the emotional part of religion. Did any of you catch Lloyd Evans' recent video where he had an interview with Dr. Darrell Ray?
Yes.
Yeah, Darrell Ray mentioned something really good in that video that I liked, which when he was talking about the religious trauma syndrome and how obviously we have evolved as social species, which you mentioned, Scott, and one of the biggest traumas that we can actually go through as a social species is to be shunned from the group. And the human brain will do anything, absolutely anything, to stop that from happening. That's how powerful that is. And that's why it's such a powerful tactic that they use.
It makes so much sense. It really makes so much sense. There's conditions where you kind of have like this, and I know I suffered from this condition, and I had to actually speak to a professional about it at one point, because you know how you have this compulsive disorder, but you can have that towards religiosity, to where you are just terrified to, like, you always second guess yourself, like, did I say something wrong? And is God going to be mad at me because I took a pen off the table at work and forgot to return it, or something really simple or stupid? Or I thought some bad thoughts. I saw a young lady and thought some bad, terrible thoughts or something like that. And this will, depending on how compulsive you are, you'll be, it'll be terrifying for you. And I went to the elders to talk to them about it, and they were really no help. I mean, they were like, well, that's why you're a great example to the younger brothers. You take it serious, and you're going to be a good example. Just keep on trying, keep on doing it, but after getting out and talking to a therapist towards the end of my career as a witness, my therapist said the only really way to get out of that is to just embrace your bad thoughts and stuff like that, and just even test it, do innocent but so-called bad things just to get comfortable in your skin and get over that, because it's not healthy. And I started doing that. And that was kind of part of what got me out too, because I started seeing the irrational fears and how irrational it was, and what an effect it was having on me and making me a terrible person towards people I loved. I was too judgmental, and because I was judging myself, number one. And so everybody else was naturally part of that too. It's just so many bad things about that,
Yeah.
Thinking of what you just...
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jared. Yeah.
I was just going to say very quickly, speaking of, people obsessing about things that for fear of displeasing God, that's the whole point of the animated video that was mentioned in this annual meeting too. If you have a chance run in with a birthday cupcake, you're going to regret it, and you're going to feel bad about it. You're going to end up sobbing into your dinner table, as Lloyd put it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's, from the mundane to the actual, the bigger things. just really quickly, I remember I used to have bad dreams that I got disfellowshipped. And then I'd wake up and say, "Oh, I'm so glad that I'm not disfellowshipped." And then now I am, I'm disassociated, but same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's all a deterrent. But anyway, I apologize, Katie.
Oh, so that's absolutely fine. Thank you for sharing that. That's brilliant. I can't remember what I was going to. Oh yeah, I was. There was something that Lloyd asked Daryl Ray. So you were mentioning that Scott, that you sure that you had religious trauma syndrome. You had this trauma from that, and I've made the point before that. In my personal opinion, I think many people who are in religion, who have been religious, have suffered this, whether they know it or not. And Lloyd actually asked this question to Dr. Daryl Ray, and he asked, is there anyone in religion that doesn't suffer with religious trauma syndrome? And Dr. Daryl Ray's answer was, I think maybe there is someone out there that doesn't get affected by it. Mm-hmm. And that was that was a psychologist's answer, professional answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we all of us here and those who are still in the religion are suffering from this trauma syndrome.
Yeah, it's all like you said. It all goes back in the chain of causes to what makes humans humans. We're social animals, and that's where it's all rooted in. We have this tendency to want to be part of the group and assimilate into the group, and this driver is going to be traumatic unless you can kill off those things that are driving you out of the group. So if you're thinking, and we're all human beings, we have other things that we do. We like to procreate. We like to do things. We're kind of violent people. We're like paradoxes, humans are. So it's going to be so easy to go through that kind of, religious trauma. And it's probably the same thing if you're part of some political group or some other group. There's probably all kinds of weird things that you might have fears about because you're part of this group and you don't want to be part of the out group. I think it's all kind of related. But I think with the religions, what's a little more distressing about that is because, we're talking about losing, you're going to lose your life, or you're going to go to hellfire or some other thing that they're dangling in front. It's all a system of sticks and carrots,
Yeah.
And we're all trying to get that carrot, and they're dangling it in front of you, and they're taking it away, and they're putting it back into your face, and it's traumatic. It's like it's a mind game, psychological mind game, I guess.
Yes, definitely a psychological mind game. I mean, I like what you mentioned, Jared, about the dreaming about being disfellowshipped, and that's how strong this psychological mind game is. You end up having nightmares about it, and that's affecting not only your conscious but your subconscious as well. That's how deep it goes.
Yeah. Yep. Something to add to that too, because that made me think. It affects everyone, and it affects everyone differently. And of course, as Dr. Ray put it, that undoubtedly there's someone out there that's perhaps not affected, but generally speaking, I think it's safe to say it works. It's designed to do something, and it does that to various degrees of success. Now, the biggest thing, and this kind of goes back to what you mentioned before, Susan, is how long you're exposed to it. So if you're born in, as an example, so for me, it was 20 years before I left. 20 years is an awful long time to be exposed to it. No great surprise I was having nightmares of being disfellowshipped or something of that nature all along the way, mind you. Certainly more when I was growing up than now. And even for people who, perhaps are only a part of the religion briefly, you're going through 600, 700, 800 pages of doctrine that is meant to indoctrinate. So it's such a powerful thing. And again, the exposure, that was the main point I wanted to bring up, that, the longer you're exposed to it, I think the harder it is. And that's why the sunk cost fallacy and things of that nature come into play. So it's better to just do your research. The counterweight to rhetoric is research, because while religion and other systems of social, machinery are engineered to target your emotions, fact is not emotional. It's just there. It's neutral. And so when you do research, it helps to put things in perspective. What should you believe? Because that's another part of it. The religion and, again, other systems of social machinery are coming to tell you what to believe by means of how you feel. So it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Very good.
Kat's made a good point in the chat as well, which I think adds to this as well, which is, she says for kids it even goes into iconography that they use in art, and that brought me reminded me of when I was a kid growing up. The Jehovah's Witnesses would actually, the elders and that would actually get you to draw your ideas of things and draw different scenarios that they're teaching from the platform. It was one of the ways that they used to indoctrinate you as a child. Can you remember anything like that, Jared, yourself? Or was that just me?
Well, by process of elimination, yes. And I say that because I wasn't allowed to do much else. If it wasn't going to be about the truth, then it was going to be something worldly, and that wouldn't be allowed. So we certainly didn't have the structure in place that the organization seems to have now. At the end of this, at the end of the broadcast of this cartoon, the Caleb and Sophia cartoon at the annual meeting.
Yeah, I'll be showing that in a bit.
He said, "Oh, the poster will be made available, and all the posters will be available." So you have posters, you have connect the dots, undoubtedly some other form of a coloring book or something of that nature. So I can't remember anything specific from my childhood, but I know that everything ended up being about the truth because there was no other option, and now there's actual structure for it.
Yeah.
Did you guys notice, and stop me if I'm jumping ahead into something I shouldn't be yet, but in this entire video, I didn't, not just Caleb and Sophia, I mean the whole report we're talking about here. I didn't hear one word, and no apocalyptic talk at all. I did not hear one apocalyptic, but in the Caleb and Sophia movie, there isn't either until they talk about the poster. Take a good look at that poster. It's dark black clouds behind them. It was, to me personally, was very disturbing. The poster alone was extremely disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the whole premise being, if you make Jehovah sad, we all know what happens.
Mm-hmm.
You just read the first couple books of the Bible. We all know what happens when you make Jehovah sad. So,
well, and Jared, since I was an old lady before I came in, I had no idea the impact that this cult has on born-ins and young children until I started meeting ones such as yourself. And it just blows my mind, the nightmares that I've heard ones such as yourself talk about. I just didn't look at it from that point of view. And so now when I watched that Caleb and Sophia, I didn't watch it until a couple of hours ago. And it made me angry. I was infuriated by the time that cartoon was over. How dare they make that child feel like that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's abuse.
Yeah,
it is.
It's definitely
this
abuse.
Is emotional and psychological abuse of children. It's disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
And let's face it, they're doing, this credit where credit is due, I suppose. They're doing an excellent job as far as animation and all that. I mean, they have some truly talented volunteers that are, providing this free labor. But for such an obviously, I'd call it nefarious purpose. Whether or not the intention is nefarious to them, I'm sure they think they're doing a great service. But the higher the quality, we're not talking about stick figures walking around. The higher the quality, you can see the sadness on Jesus' face, things like that. I won't give too much away, but I mean, gosh, it's going to evoke even me, grown man here. It evoked a certain response from me, because it's meant to. That's the design, and they do it well for what it is. So
absolutely. It's so sad. And we talking about the factual type stuff. It's so odd that 1914, how the scripture says no generation will pass away before all these things happen. And we're talking about the generation that lived through the events of 1914. I know when I was coming up, it was like it had to happen, like it was going to happen like within the next 5 years at least, when I was in it. And it was like, now here we are 30 years later. And it's like, wow, really? And these people are still looking for the end of the world to happen. And, it's just so, I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Like, I just don't know. I mean, it's the same argument you could make about the very first Christians that believe that those who were sitting next to Jesus, when he said, some of you sitting here today will not taste death until you see me coming in the clouds of glory, and blah, 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 blah. And whether that was really written and they read it, I guess the Gospels were written, 50 years or so after the cross or whatever, or after he was, nailed to the stake or the cross or whatever you believe. But it didn't matter, because those people got old too. And they still obviously believe, because the Christian movement spread for thousands of years after. So it's not like witnesses are going to be any different, I don't think. I think they're just as human as anybody else. And it's just kind of weird how we think.
It's funny you should mention that, because I just want to point out really quickly, there was this part, and you can feel free to interrupt me, Katie, if I'm getting ahead to something. I feel like we're not going to play this video. But basically, Anthony Morris was talking about how the governing body has been around since Pentecost 33 CE, and apparently has been around all since then somehow. I didn't quite understand how he was finding a link throughout thousands of years, but there's this idea that they're going to make up whatever they can to try to make sense of things. At least to me, I don't think it actually makes sense any more than their overlapping generation teaching. But it's just crazy how they'll come up with these things, because every generation has thought they'd be the special ones. They were the chosen ones that were going to get to live through Armageddon, as they think of it, as the world continues to turn.
Yeah, Jared, I was just looking back at my notes on that portion, and I wrote the question, where was the governing body during the Dark Ages?
Right. Well, the falling away, they'll tell you.
Yeah.
Oh, they were
Yeah. they have this thing where they feel like we were active in the first century up until because like we held our, witnesses will tell you, we held our first council in Jerusalem back in 50 CE or something like that, and it's in the book of Acts, where Paul and Barabbas came and talked about no eating of blood and no, this and that. They take credit for that. That was the governing body,
Yeah.
And during that, I think in that, they were saying that there's going to be a great falling away because of all this division we see going on. The apostate is going to come, and it's going to be a breaking away. And then, and then they interpret Revelation like the witnesses. We come back together at the final times to preach. How the story goes from there. But yeah, they got answers.
Yeah,
I'm gonna bring us back around to the new book because I think time's getting on and we need to start talking about this new book that they've released. So I'm going to play the video for the release of this new book, and basically the video where they tell us how to read the book.
Jehovah has always given us the right tool at the right time to teach others. And this new book is no exception. How is this book organized? Each lesson is divided into 3 parts. How do you use it to conduct a Bible study? You might encourage your student to read the first part of a lesson in advance and to note the questions in bold and the key scriptures. Begin each study by reading and discussing the first part together. Next, consider together the Dig Deeper section. Begin by reading the introductory statement, which explains what follows, and take note of the subheadings that outline the main points. Read the scriptures, watch the provided videos together, and then discuss how the scriptures and videos answer the related questions. Discuss the artwork with the student. Then follow with the questions found in the Some People Say section. Then, read the summary and discuss the review questions. Your student can enter the date the lesson was completed. Each lesson provides a goal for the student, and the Explore section offers additional content that may be useful depending on your student's needs and interests. Yes, this tool is very different. Why was it designed this way?
It's a lot like the teaching used in our theocratic schools. It is very interactive. On the one hand, the lessons are written in such a way to really make the student think about what he is learning.
This tool has the ability to involve the Bible student. It shows them with video, and then they have references they can look at, but the way that it's designed involves them, and it really is going to give them a good foundation.
On the other hand, the teacher can use the viewpoint questions to draw out how the student really feels about what he's learning from God's Word.
This is the most thoroughly field-tested publication that we have ever produced. From writing the text to simplifying the text, polishing it, getting it ready. It has been produced so that it can be translated into many languages so as to help people everywhere.
Yes, this tool is very different. But is it effective? Hundreds of publishers in almost 100 lands tested the lessons. What do they say about it?
I love the new layout. It's current and it's intuitive, and the way the Bible truths are presented, it's very logical and easy to understand. I think it's going to be a game changer.
The Dig Deeper section is amazing. It ensures that the teaching comes directly from the Bible. Because this part of the study becomes a conversation, the students answer right from their hearts, which allows me to learn a lot more about how they think and feel.
The new method really helps us to convince the mind and reach the heart. Most of all, it helps both the teacher and the student to focus on the scriptures rather than on the study aid.
We never heard anybody say, the paragraph says, because when they did answer the question, they were expressing what they really believed.
The lessons are both logical and concise. The method is highly interactive.
The students not only respond in their own words, but are also able to come to the correct conclusions all by themselves.
It helps me as the teacher to talk less, and it helps the student to express himself and to think.
And the videos elicited comments, sometimes of even a personal nature, that probably never would have come out had it not been for the videos.
The aim is to get to know Jehovah, to love Jehovah, to learn what His will is for us and to do that will, and also to draw close to His organization.
I've been in full-time service for over 50 years. I conduct several Bible studies. These lessons cannot be compared with others. They're more effective and just what we need for our times.
It equips them to explain to others what they have learned. And as a teacher, that fills me with so much joy that I am motivated to be zealous and find more new Bible studies.
We are so excited about this new approach to teaching Bible truths. The main points stand out, the application is clear, and it's easy to remember. And everybody can benefit from it, from those with little or no education to those who are highly educated. Our students are going to love this new publication.
And we will too, as this will make us better teachers of God's Word, so as to make more disciples before the end comes.
And how do members of the governing body feel about this innovative approach?
This book has the potential to draw many honest-hearted ones into Jehovah's organization, to serve alongside us in pure worship, and dedicate their lives to Jehovah.
Compared to all the Bible study tools we've used in the past, this is gold.
And that's what it's all about, helping that student build a close relationship with Jehovah, and unquestionably, this new publication, this marvelous gift from Jehovah, will help us accomplish this worthy goal.
We recognize humbly that whatever tool we use, only Jehovah can make it grow. So we're praying that Jehovah will grant success to this new tool to build and make disciples of Christ.
We are not just preachers. We are teachers. We are disciple makers. This new book gives us what we need to help others love Jehovah, follow Christ, get baptized, and enjoy life forever.
Yeah, so that was the video that they put forward to release the new book. I don't know how you can be so excited about a new book. Watching some of those witnesses there talk about how excited they are that the new book's arrived and it's going to revolutionise the way that they do the preaching and everything. It's quite sickening to watch, really, when ex-Jehovah's Witness watching back over, because that's how we all used to be whenever we got a new book. We were so excited to see it come out, and it's going to change the way that we live and change the way that we do the preaching work and everything. So anyway, what are your thoughts on this new book? Is there anything in what they said that struck you at all?
So who's gonna go first?
I'll raise my hand. Brother so-and-so?
Yeah. Pass the mic over to him.
Yeah. Where's the mic runner? So I just wanted to say quickly, it occurred to me as you were giving it the intro that David Splain kind of introduced this by talking about the variance between Bible studies conducted each year and baptisms. And it's an interesting metric when you look at it, because it's close to 10 million Bible studies, if I remember correctly. Susan, you might have it in your notes. Feel free to keep me honest. But I think it's close to 10 million that are studying each year. And in fact, then David took it upon himself to stretch the numbers a little bit by saying, oh, and you can bet that in a lot of those studies, it's more than one person sitting in. So maybe it's more like 12 to 15 million or something like that.
Yes.
So he's already trying to stretch the numbers. But then he pointed out that there's between 200,000 and 300,000 baptisms each year. So it's an interesting variance when you think about it, because as he's introducing this book, partly perhaps suggesting that there's some fault here, that there's a gap that needs to be closed. He said that it's been on sort of on the radar of the governing body for quite some time. Well, it's not the publications, is it? It's not the quality of the publications or the quality of the publisher or the quality of the governing body's design team. It's the fact that they don't have the truth. And so I don't know what the percentage is. I'd have to calculate it, but only 200,000 to 300,000 out of up to 10 million people are falling for it. How long before they're going to see that even in more decrease than we currently have seen from the 0.6% last year? So just something that I wanted to mention. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think I actually made a video on this a couple of months ago when I actually did the calculations for how many witnesses they're actually bringing in each year, and it is only in a few thousand, something like 6,000 or something each year.
Yeah.
And that was back in the 2018 figures, or 2019 figures, I'm not sure, but it's not many people that are falling for it. It's usually child indoctrination, and then that's even interesting to see the 0.6 drop, in the numbers. So they're not even convincing all of the children anymore.
To back Jared up there, yes, I did, Jared, make a note of that. He did say 10 million Bible studies, he said about 10 million Bible studies with 200,000 to 300,000 being baptized. That is a vast difference. And then at time marker 29:45, he says, we wondered why. Then he goes into Ezekiel 33:32, and then he segues out of that into all the different reasons it could possibly be. What could it possibly be? And I think Jared nailed it on the head. It's because you don't have the truth, people. That's why.
Yeah, and of course, the big excuse is going to be, well, it'll be twofold. It'll be, number one, Jehovah brings people to him, and he calls you, and he calls those righteously inclined to his.
Yes.
And then,
right-hearted.
Yep. And then on top of that, well, as we're getting later into these last days, fewer people are going to respond. We're coming to a point where we just about got everybody is going to come on board Noah's Ark. Everybody's pretty much got in the door. We're just ushering in the last few people. Then the end is going to come. But the problem happens when it doesn't happen. And then they've got another dilemma. They're going to have to hit the reset button again, as they always do.
I was trying to find a note here I made about that. They quoted some sister, and I can't find it, doggone it, in these 6 pages of notes. But she talks about how many studies she had, and I believe she said she'd had 15 studies. It's in the video about all the different Bible study books. She had 15 Bible studies, and 6 of those people had gotten baptized. So just take that. Just that one witness, 15 Bible studies, less than half of them got baptized. Of course, we have no way of knowing if any of those 6 are still in.
I think it's point. I mean, I was a regular pioneer and a special pioneer for around about 5 years, and through all of that 5 years, I only got 7 people baptized. That was it. So out of hundreds of Bible studies, only 7 people got baptized, and I can imagine that's that's what a lot of witnesses experience, is to do all of this work. Not very many people are actually coming round to the idea, and that's why we saw last year so much emphasis on showing people how a Bible study is meant to be done, how someone going, like the Jade and Nita video, how a successful Bible study to baptism actually looks, because very few witnesses actually know what that actually looks like, because it's just never happened to them.
Well, years ago, I used to be involved in sales. I used to do all kinds of different sales work, like from selling like timeshare. Well, I used to first of all sell Watchtower and Track magazines for free. But after that, I was doing things like selling timeshare or phone sales, things like that. And one of the psychology of salesmen, you might say, or saleswomen, is that, you know, on average, let's say you're doing a telemarketing job, you're selling, you know, solar panels or some other thing. Well, first of all, you're just calling people out of the blue, and they don't know they have a problem, right? So I'm kind of comparing this to the whole witness thing. So you know, on average, you'd want to make 200 phone calls, because out of 200 phone calls, you might get one sale out of that 200, and you might get a few follow-ups that'll turn into sales later on down the line. So that's kind of like an average of a good salesperson. 200 calls and one sale. So when you look at the work of Jehovah's Witnesses in that respect, it kind of makes sense. You know, it's not that the message isn't sellable. Obviously, if you can sell one person on the message, you can sell anybody, but you just have to be able to be a good salesperson. So I think in a lot of cases, a lot of witnesses are not trained how to be salespeople. They just know how to go door to door and read from a script, or, you know, follow the script in the Watchtower, or come up with a little presentation at the door. And sales requires a lot more than a presentation. Like, presentation should be short and sweet, and then you have to listen to your interlocutor to know how to respond, like listen and then respond with witty, pithy responses, and be able to ask questions, follow-up questions that'll anchor them in. Like, I think, Susan, you had mentioned how they say, isn't that exciting? You know, get them to kind of agree, get them on a train of yes, you know, like, yes, yes, yes. So why don't you come to the Kingdom Hall? Or why don't we sit down for a Bible study? Then yes will be the habit that you formed. You know, you've kind of put them in a hypnotic trance, you know. And sales is all about that. That's the psychology of sales 101. And I think witnesses, probably that's where they're failing. They need to teach their people how to be better salesmen, because that's all it really is. It's just a big sales pitch.
And then it's more disheartening as well for Jehovah's Witnesses, because what you're saying there, Scott, that makes perfect sense, and it also proves that it's not the truth. It's another thing, because their numbers, what the people are their interest in, isn't that much more than what a regular salesperson would be. But the governing body spend time and time again in these videos, you know, talking about, and when they had the meetings, you know, the elders would be saying the same thing, is that, you know, this is the truth. This is more powerful than any other message that that anyone could give, because this is God's word, and it's Jehovah that's is the one that's bringing people in. But they're not bringing anybody more in than, say, someone selling timeshares would.
Exactly. And it's not the truth, obviously, but they just know how, you know, and it's powerful stuff, though. Their material is powerful. If for a person that's open to having that conversation, you've got the foot in the door. If you've got somebody, even somebody who just wants to argue or debate with you, if you've got their audience, you've got something. You know, you have the opportunity right then and there to overcome their objections and then sell them into whatever it is you want to sell them into. And a lot of people in America are very responsive, but I think that number is declining from what the data tells us, because we have so many nuns, so many people are leaving religion like never before. So it's a little more challenging these days than ever.
Yeah. And talking about the numbers as well, you know, the disparity between what the numbers that are giving us and what the true numbers actually are. I remember a conversation that we had on that was going around on Lloyd's Discord server, which was, you know, because they all keep records on all previous witnesses, even those that are disfellowshipped, disassociated, and what have you. And the question asked was, how many of us out of are still in the records? How many of us who have left are they still using to, you know, prop up their you know, their numbers?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know, it's like anything in any sales, you have to track your numbers. You'll never progress if you don't track. It's one of the sales 101 rules. Always track your numbers, track your calls, track everything.
You know, talking about it being like a salesperson, the very first midweek meeting I went to, when it was over, I remarked to a sister that it reminded me of the Dale Carnegie School of Quality Leadership. Now, y'all are probably too young to know what I'm talking about, but back in the 80s and 90s, when I owned and operated an audio video production house, and most of our work was marketing and promotion. And as part of that, I took the Dale Carnegie course on marketing quality leadership. And I'm telling you, that midweek meeting, and this was when they still had the Kingdom Ministry, and it was theocratic ministry school.
Ministry school, yeah, on Thursdays.
It was literally being like at a Dale Carnegie seminar. And because I had that marketing background, it was like immediate, and it actually put me off. But I pushed through that flag as well.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Susan, because I actually attended the ministerial training school when it was still a thing within Jehovah's Witnesses. And that was set out exactly like you would imagine a marketing marketing training, like a, you know, college sort of course in marketing. It was, you know, all around sales technique and leadership skills and all of that, and there wasn't a lot of which was something that struck me, because there wasn't a lot of like spiritual teaching or anything there. It was literally just training you to be an agent of the of the organization.
Yeah, they could have substituted encyclopedia or vacuum cleaners and sent us out door to door, and we probably had more success.
A nice kitchen knife set, perhaps. But, you know, not to be a broken record, but once again, where's Jehovah's part in any of this?
Right.
If it's only about Jehovah making, you know, like you mentioned earlier, Scott, drawing people in, you know, the heart condition and, you know, all of these things. I mean, there was no such, in fact, I don't believe there was anything in the Christian Greek scriptures that comes to mind. I'm certainly no scholar, but feel free to keep me honest. About preparation, about any sort of, you know, training program on how to speak to people. It was really just go talk. And because, you know, the theme of the Bible, or that part of it, the narrative is God's going to be doing the growing anyway. That's the part of the Bible that they're getting the scripture from. So it all is so contrary, you know, the lack of growth, the rather, you know, ill-equipped as far as, because, you know, I've been in sales, and in some ways I'm still in sales. And actual sales is better than what you're going to get on a Saturday morning when a Jehovah's Witness knocks on your door.
All they got is prayer. But, you know, it's like in the Bible, in the book of Acts, the only thing that prepared them was God's Holy Spirit came down so that they could speak in tongues or in different languages in order to spread the message. And, Jesus said, when you go into a town and they don't accept you, wipe your sandals off and keep walking.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't say come up
Good
with all
point.
these different rebuttals and different objection handling.
Excellent point.
And if they say this, then you say that.
And wasn't that the whole point of the knowledge book? And then, or is it, which one am I thinking of? Maybe not the knowledge book. Which is the one where it had the conversation stoppers and conversation starters? Reasoning. Thank you. There we go.
Yeah.
That was the whole point, was trying to have this chess-like strategy. But also one thing about the book too, the new book. Am I the only one? I know the length of the book isn't all that much longer than the ones you were mentioning, Susan, but 60 lessons. How are you supposed to, when you go from the first 3 onto the full book, if you're lucky enough to get there with somebody, how are you supposed to say, well, great, now that we've done the first 3, let's move on to the other 57?
God, Spirit, he's told the governing body that we have to take a new route because the times we're living in is kind of guiding that process now.
Of course. Who am I to run ahead of Jehovah's chariot?
Yeah, don't run ahead of the light, man.
And did anyone else notice as well? I picked up on something that they said in the talk after they played that video. I can't remember the name of the brother who was giving the talk, but he made quite a forceful point, and he was talking about the books that you mentioned, Susan, the previous books that they brought out, and then he was talking about the new book that they've got, and he said, this is the only book that you need to use from now on. And then he re-emphasized by going, I repeat, do not use the old books anymore, only this new publication. And that struck me a bit. Like, I really want to read this new book, see what changes they're making, because it sounds like the setting witnesses up for some big changes that they're making.
Well, and what really struck me as well is what they've done in the new book is they've combined these 3.
Oh gosh.
Because there are 60 lessons, there are 60 baptism questions. So by the time they get to the end, of the new Bible study book, they are supposed to, they don't even have to study this when they already have the answers to all 60 baptism.
Interesting. Have there always been 60? Because that just struck me like a lot. I can't remember how many I had to go through, but
let me see.
Because didn't there used to be an actual specific book for that? I could have sworn.
Yeah, it's this. Yeah, this one.
Well, wasn't there before that though? I mean, I guess I got baptized in 2005, so I don't know when that book came out.
Well, let's see. This is 2015.
Okay. Yeah, I just remember there being a specific book for it that didn't seem nearly that big.
Yeah. Actually, the first copyright date on this one is 2005. So I guess they renewed or something on 2015.
Maybe it used to be called that, but it was, I think, a green book, if I'm not mistaken. Red book. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember that green book.
It was the Borg Skeptic book.
But out of curiosity, in the video lineup, was there the one where they were kind of capping things off with the coronavirus response, like how they,
yes,
that we were planning on playing? Okay,
it's the white horse, man.
Because I thought they made some very interesting comments in there. I mean, a lot of self-congratulatory back patting, but
that's what I wrote down. That's what I wrote down. They are breaking their arms, patting themselves on the back, Jared.
Yeah.
Well, and a thing if I could, there was something that this struck me as really funny, and this is in the more dumbed down as we're getting to this new book. Okay, at time marker 46:25, and this is Jeffrey Jackson is talking. There, he had talked to a sister who had been a sister for 65 years. And she has learned more about the Bible in the last few years using these books than in all of the decades before. And I wrote down, really? You've learned more than in 65 years of being a practicing, dedicated Jehovah's Witness. You've learned more about the Bible. She specifically said, I've learned more about the Bible in the last few years than all the decades before.
Yeah, but
so
I think there's another aspect to it as well. I think it was, what's his name? Goat-like Personality on YouTube.
Jonas,
Yeah, he brought out a video that I remember watching a few months back where he was talking about are the examples that they give in their talks and the obviously the interviews that they do with people, he was asking the question, are they actually real, or are they staging a lot of this to give the idea that they're trying to get across?
Well, you know, when they, in the video they play that has the testimonials from the publishers when they did the trial run on this, I was actually surprised to see that they posted their names and what country they're from. We're not used to that. Yeah.
Maybe they watched Goat-like Personality's video and went, oh shit, we're gonna have to add in some names to show that this is real.
Well, and he did actually, David Splain did say, oh, I'd heard from a couple brothers and I was able to verify. So he did kind of seem to be going out of his way to add some credibility to it.
Yeah.
So are we wanting to play the what is it, the cartoon, these Caleb and Sophia?
Yeah.
We're wanting to play that and then have a little chat about that terrible propaganda video that they did for kids. So I'll get that playing now so viewers can watch that. Oh, I think so this is going to be the Caleb and Sophia video. Sorry for the black screen. I edited this a little bit out of sync. But it will start momentarily.
It was Jesus' last night with his apostles. You are the ones who have stuck with me in my trials. Soon, Jesus would be arrested. It was going to be very hard for them. All of you will be stumbled in connection with me on this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered about.
They were going to run away and abandon Jesus.
But Peter said,
although all the others are stumbled in connection with you,
I will never be stumbled.
Very good, Caleb. Peter thought he was strong and would never make Jehovah sad.
I tell you, Peter, a rooster will not crow today until you have denied knowing me 3 times.
Cuckoo! No, it's cock-a-doodle-doo. Nuh-uh. That's not a rooster.
Okay, kids, it's not important how the rooster sounds.
I'll never make Jehovah sad. Me neither.
We know you'd never want to.
But Jesus knew Peter would be afraid. And when you are afraid...
Oh go! You're late! Hurry, grab your bags. Be careful. Love you, kids. See you later.
Be good.
Bye, Mom. Bye, Dad.
I'm home. Hello? Anybody?
He had a rough day.
Oh, what happened? Caleb, are you okay?
What if Jehovah doesn't want to be my friend anymore?
Jehovah wants to be your friend. But if you did something bad, he wants you to tell.
Okay, so today at school, I was outside on the playground. Hey, Caleb. Oh, hey, I was just, You can have it. Wait! I thought he can't have it.
Yeah, which is it?
I didn't want it anyway. But I thought the Bible says you can't. It says...
Come on, what does it say?
I'm not sure.
But you came to my house the other day to talk about the Bible, don't you remember?
Yeah, maybe that wasn't me.
That was you, but you're scared.
That was a rough day. Do you remember when Peter said he would never stumble? Later that night, Jesus was arrested.
Move it.
Peter loved him and wanted to help. But doing the right thing isn't always easy.
You too were with Jesus the Galilean.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Wait! This is one of them.
I do not know the man.
Hey, you follow Jesus. I saw you in the garden with him, did I not?
I swear, I do not know the man.
Peter knew the right thing to do, but he was afraid and did the wrong thing.
Just like at school.
Yes. Peter didn't want to make that mistake ever again. But he wondered if Jesus and Jehovah would still be his friends. After Jesus was resurrected, he talked to Peter.
Simon, son of John, do you love me?
Yes, Lord, you know I have affection for you.
Jesus forgave him.
And so did Jehovah. But Peter had to talk to Jesus. If you upset Jehovah, what do you think you have to do?
Talk to Jehovah.
That's right. You need to pray to ask for forgiveness. And Jesus showed Peter that he was forgiven by giving him more work to do.
Shepherd my little sheep.
So why didn't Peter give up when he made a mistake?
Because Jehovah forgives. Hey guys! Oh, wait! I'm gonna need to explain birthdays. Can you help me?
Well, that was the Caleb and Sophia feature-length video. I think that's the first feature-length one they've done, isn't it? It's like done it as a little small movie. Backstage, we were mentioning how we've got to give them credit that they have done quite a good job on the graphics and the animation for that, but the content, I don't think we can give them credit for that. That was some heavy child indoctrination there that they were using, and absolutely abysmal in my opinion.
Child abuse.
Yeah, definitely child abuse.
You notice Morris introduced it as an epic edition. It's epic.
Epic child abuse.
And as I told you guys, when we were backstage on this issue, I had literally written down, I can't talk about this, but because it just pisses me off so much, I just can't hardly stand it. I'm going to let Jared say what he might want to say in regards to the guilt thing. But I really like this one, this quote towards the end. This is a direct dialogue from this cartoon. Jesus showed him he was forgiven by giving him more work to do. Just like the governing body, just like your elders. Jesus showed him he was forgiven by giving him more work to do.
Wow.
That's all I have to say right now. Yeah.
That just says it all, doesn't it, with the organisation? It's all about working for the organisation, you know, giving everything that you have, your time, your effort, your money, your knowledge, your freedom, all over to the organisation, and that's all they want. They're just using you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jared, you wanted to give a few thoughts on it.
Gosh, what to even say? I think, you know, I was just kind of contemplating a few things right now, based on what y'all were just saying. And, you know, I think one of the biggest things for me, again, the audience here being children, the idea that you can't even pick up a cupcake at someone's birthday party. You can't even pick it up. You know, don't go to eat it. Don't get any, as Lloyd would say, you know, flecks of cupcake on your nose. If you do that, then you will be making Jehovah sad. And if you were Peter back in Jesus' day, Jesus would be giving you a mournful look. You know, I know that active witnesses will be looking at this like a masterpiece, and they'll be thinking that it's such a great tool to help their children understand the value of obedience. But that's not what it is it? You know, again, it doesn't really matter how it makes us feel. It matters whether or not it's true. And when you're looking into the idea that the governing body is representing God, you know, if you want to believe in God, by all means, go ahead. But the idea that the governing body is representing God, is representing Jesus, because again, remember the idea that Jesus being the head of the Christian congregation. I mean, that's very powerful indoctrination. And even as an adult, as I watched that, you know, I could feel that tractor beam tugging at me, because of my 20 years of indoctrination. So I think it just makes me feel bad, honestly, because as you mentioned, graphically, it's so well done. Even the storyline, you know, it's well oiled. Everything from a design perspective, they did a good job. But that's only going to increase the effectiveness in some ways, increase the ability for kids to bring those images back to mind and think, I better not touch that cupcake, and I better shun my brother or my sister or my mother or my father because they've left the organization. You know, it cascades. It's not just the cupcake. It's never just the cupcake. And I think that's why it bothers me as much as it does.
The nicer the rose, the larger the thorns. That's
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just it's so, you know, it goes back to putting people on pedestals. You know, they're all about what books you read, what people you listen to, what teachings we expound at the Kingdom Hall, who you look up to. It's all about fear of people, just like every religion, really. But Jehovah's Witnesses are just one extreme example of that. And it's no wonder. I mean, people wrote the Bible, and we're supposed to look at that like they were also God's prophets and God's people. And we're supposed to fear what they wrote and fear them, when at the same time it says all humans lie, every man is a liar. Find God true while you find every man a liar. Well, the Bible was written by men. And then so was Jehovah's Witness material. All this stuff is written by men. So it's so self-refuting, and yet it's so powerful to people because it offers such a hope and false hopes and stuff like that we were just discussing. So yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and to follow on with the fear of other people. We were talking about it backstage, you know, the people outside the organisation. They build up this fear, and I noticed something in it when I watched it which really pissed me off, and M&K's noticed it as well, and she says in the chat, they always portray non-JWs as mean and angry. And that scene where the kids were ganging up on Caleb, and you know, and being quite aggressive with him, asking him to recite the Bible and that and everything in a mean way, that just would never happen in the real world. Yet they have this mentality that they're taught that this does happen in the real world. and they taught this fear that everybody who's not a Jehovah's Witness is non-loving, the horrible, the awful people that you should never have anything to do with, you should never associate with, the bad association.
Mm-hmm.
It's building up this rhetoric of fear, which is one of the hardest things when you leave the organisation, is trying to get past that, because you're always expecting everyone to be bad. And I think we mentioned it in the backstage as well. That can lead to, when you have left, it's just setting you up to get into the bad crowds. It's just setting you up to fall into those shortfalls in the world. And then they can use that against you by going, oh, see, we told you. We told you. Now you come back to the loving arms, to all of this love bombing that we have.
It reminds me of the she-bear story. When the kids were ripped apart by the she-bear for calling God's prophet Baldy or something like that. It's like, yeah, that number one, that was a disgusting story. I don't know what the moral of the story was supposed to be, but it was kind of like God is a monster. But then it also left the kids with this feeling of, your bullies are going to be, Jehovah's going to kill your bullies for you, You're standing up, you're fighting the good fight, and the world is out to get you. These kids are gonna torment you, and God is gonna pay them back. Vengeance is mine, and all this stuff. And it's just a real warped view of the world that they project on you.
Yeah, and you talk about love all the time, and but how is it loving when you've got in the organisation? It might be loving among them, but as you said, you're always thinking, as a kid or as an adult, if you're a kid at school or you're an adult at work, you've always got in the back of your mind, oh well, I don't care what you think. You're gonna die soon. You're an evil person. My God's going to wipe you out, and you sort of convince yourself that that's a loving thought to have. And
right.
As you say, it's warped. It's bordering on psychopathic.
Yeah, it's violent. It's violent behavior. God is going to commit violence against people that disagree, or people that don't glorify Him. It's all about glorifying God. That's the whole point. Is He'll harden Pharaoh's heart just to glorify His name throughout the earth. I mean, there's no point to it other than that. And He'll send angels of death to kill kids to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really sick. And I don't know.
I feel great concern for those who are born in and then are disfellowshipped. Let's say, hypothetically, let's say you're 16, 17. You get disfellowshipped, and you've been raised as a witness. As soon as you turn 18, parents kick you out the door. Where in that 18 years you ever equipped to deal with real life? So it's like they're taking you and throwing you to the wolves. We're going to raise you up completely naive. Now, I am pleased anyone who was born in. I realize that I'm kind of talking out of school here, not having been, but I am a mother, and I raised my children well, and they will tell you that. And I raised them to be critical thinkers. I raised them to know what the world is like, how to deal with certain issues. That when they left my home, they knew how to pay their bills, how to get a job, how to keep a job, just how to drive a car, how to buy a car, you kids see what I'm getting at here. And I worry about those who are completely unprepared when they are thrown to the wolves by the Jehovah's Witness parents. Anybody can grab them up.
Mm-hmm.
Anything can grab them up.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Where do they go? Where do they go? I've heard stories. I've heard stories of young ones being in that situation, and they end up living in their friend's bedroom, hiding from the friend's parents, sneaking in and out the bedroom window because they have no place to go. it just, oh my God, it infuriates me.
Something I thought of too,
Anyway.
with what you mentioned, Katie, that, you know, some people will end up falling into the crowds that, you know, that they were always told about, you know, because there's this unnecessary amount of attention given to them. Another option too is that they end up, and this was kind of my scenario, which is why I say this. I wasn't cool enough to be in the cool crowd, right? So, you know, so as an example, with being born in, one of the side effects of that was that I was homeschooled. And so I never set foot in a classroom. And so here I am, you know, almost 20 years old. And I couldn't fit into the crowds that might have gotten me in trouble, but I certainly wasn't going to be hanging out with witnesses. So I just found myself alone. And fortunately, I'm not alone anymore, and I have the pleasure of being here with the three of you. But it's the idea that there are a lot of people, you know, again, I was almost 20, you know, they could have been 16, 17, what have you. They don't know how they're going to rebuild their friend group. They don't know how they're going to exist in a social capacity in the world because they haven't been given the game, as we say.
Yeah, so. You know, my kids are mixed kids. Like they're half, you know, white and black. And I couldn't imagine if like my kids were raised in the witnesses, how they would operate in the world today. I mean, they go through certain things, you know, from black kids and white kids and all these other things, along with everything other kids go through anyways, right? So it's like, that's a lot to deal with. And then on top of it, you've got this baggage of having to be a Jehovah's Witness on top of it. And you have to, you know, balance that out. And I don't understand. I don't know what that would look like. I would be really sad to see my kids have to deal with all that, because it's tough enough, like trying to help my children feel, you know, that they can fit in, because they have problems finding friends too. Like they've got people that make fun of them because of their race or whatever, you know, by both sides of everybody for whatever reason. And it's sad, you know, but that's just an added pressure, man. You know, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's that pressure that you know, builds up for Jehovah's Witness kids, and it's not easy. And I suppose this is, you know, you mentioned, Jared, that you were you know, homeschooled, and yeah, I was homeschooled as well. And there's a lot of the friends that I had when I was growing up in Jehovah's Witnesses that were also homeschooled, and I think this is why one of the reasons why a lot of, apart from obviously, you know, an indoctrination technique to keep you away from all the bad influences, it's also because Jehovah's Witness kids find it extremely difficult at school. It was mentioned in the chat that, you know, it's all the fun things that they take away from you, so you can't do anything that everyone else, all the other kids, are having fun doing, and you know, and that really is a pressure, like you said, Scott, on, you know, on a child. On top of all the normal pressures that any kid goes through.
It's terrible, you know. Yeah, it's a terrible thing. And you know, the you know, they, of course, they'll tell you that they've got materials to help kids. Like I forget what the tracks were, or the publications were called. It's been a long time, but
Young People Ask.
Yeah.
Young
Questions,
people
the young ones, is it? The young ones.
Yeah, and you know, try to help them navigate through dating and stuff like that. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
You know, listening to music, you know, what kind of clothes can you wear? You know, what kind of music can you listen to? Yeah, it was so much, man. It's too much.
And then how are you meant to, if once you leave, you know, like me and Jared, you know, when you leave, how are you meant to deal with that? How are you? What you'd live a completely different life than what anybody else in the modern era would live, and you have completely different, outlook on the world. Your worldview is completely screwed up. How are you meant to live? How are you meant to get by? You've got no street smarts. You've got no knowledge of how anything works. Obviously you're going to. There's a very high likelihood that you're going to fall into a bad crowd. You mentioned, Susan, people falling into these bad crowds, and I can attest to that. I did. I was, couch surfing among friends that I had at college and that, but they weren't very good friends, and I ended up getting onto drugs and heavy drinking and smoking, which that's still with me, but yeah. So
I'm wanting one right now.
You're definitely going to go through depression. That's for sure. You're
definitely
some measure of depression, depending on how serious you were, how long you were in it, and people like that need support. And I would suggest calling. I think it was recovering from religion.
Yes.
You looked at
very good, very good.
Yeah, because that would be really helpful to talk to somebody through that process, because you're going to go through depression. I know I did. I was really depressed for a long time.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, and just to follow up on what Scott was saying about recovering from religion, I think I should actually give them a shout out in this. So for anybody who's watching who may be leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, or thinking about leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, or has left and is struggling with the thoughts and and living life in the world, then I would definitely suggest giving them a call, because they have some amazing services there. If you need therapy, they have the Secular Therapy Project, which will sidetrack all of those religious nut job psychologists that there seems to be in America, and they're just really good. And if you just need to talk, they have helplines there, and they have people which are really good and are trained in talking to you. Or if you just want to have a talk with a peer group, they have peer groups there that you can join into, and it's just other people like yourself who are struggling, and you're able just to let it all out and get some support from people who may be going through the same. I will leave a link in the description of this video to their website if you need help.
That's all.
JW Survey is another very good source, at least to me, in my opinion. It was very helpful to me. And they also have ways that they can hook you up with therapists, mental health care professionals that can help people with this struggle,
Yeah, I'll leave a link to them in the description as well, because like Scott was saying, you need these support groups. Some people are going to need this support because of the depression,
and and it's something that doesn't really end. I mean, maybe the depression ends. Like for me, it's been so long. I mean, that's like an old memory for me now. But like now, I've relocated to Florida from Irvine, California. And it's like a totally different world down here. There's like a church on every corner, man. It's like, there's a liquor store, and right next to the liquor store is a church. That's how it is out down here. So it's like, I don't know who my friends are going to be. Like, who am I going to talk to about anything? Because everybody's will ask you. Like, I'll go out like somewhere and someone will ask me what church I go to. It's like, I don't go to any church, and then look at you kind of strange, like, what are you, an atheist or something? Like, like you wouldn't get that in California. Like, California is very diverse, and I have plenty of people. But out here, it's a different world. And so I was even thinking about starting my own group down here, because I couldn't find a group that I could interact with in person. And so, it's weird. So, these type of things follow you for years. It's been years since I was a witness. And it's just now dawning on me how I need to associate with people that are like-minded, because.
Yeah, definitely. Right, so I'm going to finish up the stream in about 10 minutes or so. So, is there any other things that we wanted to discuss? I think you wanted to mention something at the end of the video, Jared.
Yeah, so at the end, they did this kind of highlights reel of how they got the 2020 convention put together, and so on such short notice as far as having all the talks recorded and all of that. And one of the big things for them is translation services. So what I thought was interesting, a couple things. First of all, they were going around showing how a lot of people had to like get green screens in their house. Apparently a few people went so far as to paint a wall in their house green so that they could have a green screen, because they were sign language translators, and so they needed to have the visual and a green screen so it can be superimposed onto an actual video. So what I thought was interesting about that, especially in some of these more less fortunate, the poverty countries, to get your own studio, at least, even if it's just a microphone, to get your own microphone or to get a green screen should be easy, but it's not free, right? And so you have some of these less wealthy countries where, Jehovah's Witnesses are having to get their own equipment to record things for the indoctrination sessions at the convention. I just thought, and maybe possibly they were throwing some money their way, maybe. But I just thought to myself, they're patting themselves on the back for having people that are willing to maybe choose between something they've been saving up for and getting that microphone. And they went and got that microphone. Of course, that's a little bit of conjecture on my end, but I know from some other examples that they've had officially, and also things that I hear unofficially, that people really can't afford. For example, when they made the switch to JW Broadcasting, they may not have been able to afford an iPad. They may not have been able to afford some sort of device where they can, follow along with things. And so it's just, to me, that struck a chord with me. If they're going to have people doing that kind of thing, then add some support. But what really stood out to me, and this is my final point so I can stop hogging the airwaves, I thought it was very interesting that they made this distinction between people who serve Jehovah and those who don't. One of the branch committee representatives, I believe it was, for one, I think it was audiovisual, something like that. He was very fiery almost in the way that he said it. He was like, oh yeah, this is the separation between people who serve Jehovah and those who don't, referring to the fact that they were able to get everything done in what seemed like an impossible timeline for the 2020 convention. I thought, if only there had been other people, maybe not Jehovah's Witnesses, during 2020, who had gone up against crazy odds and an impossible timeline to get something done. What could that be like? Maybe the coronavirus vaccine? Meanwhile, they're so concerned with their 2020 convention as a pandemic rages outside their compound. And mind you, many witnesses at this point have died from it. And yet medical researchers and the scientific community have been on the real front lines developing a vaccine that, at least as we know so far, is going to be quite effective. So excuse me if I'm not all that impressed by the fact that you could get some volunteers to go spend their piggy bank money on a microphone for you. But there's bigger things that happened last year. So don't get me wrong, what they did with the convention, I see where they're coming from. I know that active witnesses will appreciate it, but it just shows how insulated they are. They think of their own accomplishments. They think of themselves. In reality, there's bigger things happening outside.
I noticed that as well, and thank you for bringing that up, because I'd sort of forgot about it towards the end of this video here, and You know, that it really did piss me off that they said that, just the way they said it as well, which was just insinuating that they're the only ones that have done anything. And as you say, what have they put their efforts into? It's meaningless to 2020. It's a bloody convention. They have one every year, and what difference has it made to people's lives? It hasn't made, not like researchers in vaccines and everything, which is going to save lives, guaranteed to save lives. Whereas what they've done, if it happens to be true, it will save lives. That's a big bloody if. You're putting a lot on that freaking if, and they could have been doing and one of the things that I think back to 2020 that they put a lot of emphasis onto last year was this food parcel scheme that they had. That was just one big bloody scam. They didn't do anything for that. They took the federal food boxes and just re-stamped them with JW stuff and put a scripture inside. And then went, oh, look at what Jehovah's providing for us. It's all adding to the rhetoric like we were speaking about earlier.
And they got paid to do it.
Yep.
They got paid to do it. And Katie, when the time's appropriate, I did have just a few remarks on that pandemic, on that last video they had. Well, the first thing I wanted to say is that obviously the governing body never lets a good crisis go to waste. They never let a good crisis go to waste. I made the same kind of note that Jared had remarked. I wrote here, they're really giving themselves a good pat on the back, aren't they? Oh, look how wonderful we are. Well, guess what? Everybody else is doing what you're doing. Anybody watch the national news or their local news lately? They're all broadcasting from their homes. This is nothing. Okay. And then we get down here and they give Jehovah all of the credit for them being able to do this. The green screen, all of the, okay. It was the technology that made this possible, not Jehovah. Jehovah didn't invent Zoom. Men invented Zoom. And then the governing body utilized that tool. So, I mean, for crying out loud, and then on this, now shut down my rant after this. There's one in there that they walked 46 kilometers to watch a video.
Gosh.
Sometimes they would leave the night before and walk 46 kilometers to watch a video on a screen this big. If you were looking at if you watched the video.
Yeah, I know.
Now, if that's not fucking cult indoctrination, I don't know what is.
What it is. And I would just add that if scientists listened to Jehovah's Witnesses, we wouldn't have a vaccine. We wouldn't be having vaccines for when these things evolve and mutate into different strains, because they reject evolution. They reject basic science. So they're really going to be doing the world a disservice if we actually were to take them seriously and the world were to operate according to their science. We wouldn't have a vaccine and things would just get worse.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I even wrote it down because I want to make sure that the last time you asked me for closing remarks, I felt like I kind of rambled and drifted. But, we're all apostates here. And I looked up in their Insight book the definition of apostasy. The first sentence tells you that it comes from the Greek and it merely means to stand away. It means to stand away. All right. But the world, PMOs, others that are are witnesses now, and maybe they're thinking about getting out, maybe they're thinking about studying, so on and so forth. This is what I want to say to them. JWs and others are told that, like a disgruntled employee, we apostates are just pissed off and dissing the organization? Well, first of all, a thinking person might ask, what are they pissed off about? But even if you weren't going to allow yourself to ask that question, and if you're JW, it wouldn't be allowed. In fact, there are as many reasons for leaving JWs as there are apostates and PMOs. And ex-JWs, we have merely stepped away from. We are not out here angry. We're not trying to draw you away. We are not feasting at the table of demons, and we are not mentally diseased. We have merely reasoned our way out of a thought fortress.
Mm-hmm.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Right, any other thoughts before I finish it up, because we are running a little bit over time.
Nothing for me. Just grateful to be here. Grateful to be here with the three of you, and really enjoyed the conversation.
Same here.
Yeah. And thank you very much for each of you coming on. This has been an amazing conversation. Really, really enjoyed it. Hope the viewers have enjoyed it as well. So before I wrap up, I will say, please remember, everybody, ignorance is never bliss. So for upcoming streams, I've got a stream tomorrow, which will be the Borg Skeptic show again. I've got a guest coming on, XJW writer Jason Wine, I think his name is. And I'm going to have him on, and we're going to be talking about, I think he wanted to talk about the baptism questions and how they were changed in I think 2018. So he wants to discuss about that, so we'll be discussing about that. So please tune in if you can. And this show, I will be doing a monthly stream of this. We've got part 2 to the annual meeting, which will be in the February broadcasting episode. So probably try and get a stream going for that again and do this again, because this has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for that. Enjoyed it.
And good night, everybody. And stay safe. And let's have a better 2021 than we did in 2020.